I joined the military right out of high school. I was 18, just got out of high school, a week out of high school, went to basic training, went to boot camp, and eventually learned how to fly helicopters and was a helicopter pilot for 6 of the 8 years that I was in the military. Well, anybody that joins the service, I was in the first of the 110th Air Cav from 1986 to 1993. Anybody that joins the service will find that they go through this thing called boot camp. And that's basically 8 weeks of trauma-based mind control. It is. I mean, there's no other way to put it. But you will have what they call the Common Soldier's Task Manual when you go through. And in those 8 weeks, you're going to learn some basic common soldier tasks that everybody has to know. Everybody has to know the same things. You're going to learn about your chain of command. Who do you take your orders from? Who do you answer to? You know, all the way up to the president. You'll have to know your common tasks. Everybody has to know how to, you know, set up a tent and dig a latrine and things like that. You'll have to know your equipment. They used to say you have to be smarter than the equipment you're operating. So, like, if you're going to be a truck driver, you got to be smarter than a truck, you know. You have to know your weapons inside and out. You have to get to where you can take your M16 apart, blindfolded, and put it back together again. And you have to know your weapons inside and out. You have to know your military's tactics. How does your military function? What are the types of things that your military, you know, how does your military operate in the field? You learn those things in 8 weeks, and you'll spend a little bit more time learning that throughout your military career. But for the most part, after you've learned all the stuff about your military, you spend the rest of your time learning about the enemy. You have to know your enemy. If you're going to be able to wage an effective warfare, you have to know what you're going up against, right? And so we used to do these things with flashcards and line drawings or silhouettes or pictures, and it was very rapid fire. You had to identify that right away. Now, I couldn't just say, that's a tank. No. I had to say exactly what kind of tank that was. That's a T-72 Russian tank. I had to know the nomenclature. Okay? Same thing, because I was a helicopter pilot, we had to know various airframes, both for our military as well as allied forces as well as your enemy. And I couldn't say that's a helicopter. I had to say that's a Mi-24 Hind D, Russian helicopter. I got very good at these flashcards when I was in the military. I knew them very well. So that when you're in the foreign field, or you're in the combat scenario, you can tell the difference between that's a Russian helicopter, and this right here, which is an American Apache. You have to be able to tell the difference quickly. Now, of course, if he's shooting at you, that's a pretty good indication it's a bad guy, right? But you have to be able to tell, you know, by looking, just quickly, I'd be able to identify it. Well, I knew these aircraft very, very well. How many of you know who Steve Quayle is? All right, quite a few people. Have you ever listened to him on the radio? Yeah. Does he make you feel like tomorrow's the end of the world? Yeah. I love Steve Quayle. He's on my speed dial. I've talked to him a number of times. I love him. But he does make you feel like tomorrow's the end of the world, you know? But you know what? He's a watchman on the wall. He's doing the best he can with the information that he has, and he's trying to make that information available to you. Well, he was telling a story about how Doug talked about the financial collapse. You know, we're right on the edge, right? And he was saying, this was a couple of years ago, he was saying that, you know, this weekend, it looks like this weekend could be what they call a bank holiday, where you're going to just wake up and you're not going to be able to access any of your bank accounts. You know, everything, you're just not going to get your money. And he was making a very strong case for honest weights and measures, gold and silver, right? So, you know, I had listened to his broadcast, and I had seen the same things that he was talking about myself, and I'm like, man, you know, he might be right. So I didn't have a whole lot in the bank to begin with, but I went to the bank with the intention of liquidating all of my bank accounts and going out and buying silver, because I could afford silver. It was a lot cheaper than gold. So I go to the bank, and I withdraw all my funds. I walk out of the bank, and I see this coming right at me. Literally, I walked out of the bank, and I hear the sound of a helicopter. And, you know, like you hear a sound, you look up. I look up, and I see an Mi-24. This is the picture I took right there, flying right at me. Now, okay, now you got to put yourself in my frame of mind, you know. Okay, I spent my whole military career identifying these things, you know. I'm there liquidating my bank account because I think tomorrow's going to be a bank holiday. The New World Order is going to set up. We've all heard the stories about Russian and Chinese troops, right, all over the United States. And so I see, a Russian gunship flying right at me. And I happened to be on the phone with a buddy of mine who was a former Special Forces guy. He was an airborne guy. His name was Dallas. I said, Dallas, you're not going to believe it. There's an Mi-24 coming right at me. He's like, what? I'm like, yeah, let me call you back. So I saw the helicopter. It came, literally, to get a picture like that, that's not zoomed in. I mean, it was coming right over the bank. It came down and it went behind some buildings, so I said, I'm going to go figure out where that thing went. So I'm driving my car, I go around to another side street and get to a red light, I'm going to turn left. And as I'm sitting at this street light, I see another one coming. Now, if I had any doubts, those doubts were gone at this point. I'm thinking, this is Red Dawn. How many of you have seen Red Dawn? Right? Wolverine! Yeah, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, right? Red Dawn. Okay, you gotta put yourself in my mindset here, okay? Now, I'm thinking for sure this is Red Dawn. 2 helicopters, Russian helicopters in Plano, Texas, okay? And so I pull into a gas station across the street, a QT gas station, and as this helicopter's coming in for a landing, and it lands out in this field out there. Now, how many of you saw Red Dawn, the first one? Okay, just about everybody. Do you remember how it started? It started, they're in school and the paratroopers land in the football field, right? The teacher walks out, hey, what happened? You guys fly off course? Right? You got blown away, right? So as this helicopter was landing, all these people are walking out to the helicopter, I'm like, didn't you see the movie? I'm like, the teacher, man, the teacher. So I'm totally flipping out, right? I mean, I'm telling you, this is me. I'm like, Wolverine! So I'm in the parking lot talking with, now, this is Texas, right? So, everybody's packing, Now, I came from Massachusetts. That's a different world up there. It's hard to get firearms up there. But I moved here in 2003, and it's like I walked into Walmart, and I could just carry this out. Like, yeah, no problem. Wow. So, I look around, and a couple other guys had seen Red Dawn too, because we were all looking at each other. What do you got? Yeah, I got a shotgun. I got a 380. We're taking inventory of what we had because we're thinking something's going down here, Now, as the helicopter finally wound down to a stop, the door opened up and a guy dressed in civilian clothes got out. And so I was like, okay. And all of us kind of, we take a deep breath, we're thinking, okay, what's going on here? Then we could see nothing was really happening that we were suspecting could happen. So I walked out there, and come to find out, there's a Russian Air Museum in Lancaster, Texas. It's a Cold War era museum where they have all this old Cold War era equipment. These guys were just out on a joyride. They went to go get a Firehouse Subway. The building is like right over here. These guys are out for a joyride to get a sandwich. Now I'm like, where's the other one? And they're like, the other what? I said, I saw 2 helicopters. And he said, no. What they did is they came in and just surveyed the landing site and then came back around for a second approach. Put yourself in my mindset, though. I saw 2. So I told the guy, I said, dude, you almost got totally wasted, man. He's like, what are you talking about? I said, those trucks over there, all those guys? Yeah, well, we're about to go Red Dawn on you. We had a good conversation about that, but what that showed me was that myself and very few people were prepared if that was a real event. If that was a real world scenario, most of those people would have gotten totally wasted, just like the teacher in Red Dawn. Okay? A few of us had taken the time to know our enemy. All right, when it comes to spiritual things, we have an enemy, don't we? Yeah, we see in Ephesians 6:12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. That's our enemy. But how many of us are equipped to know how to fight that? How many churches are equipping you to understand how the enemy works? How many of you have ever read the book, The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis? Where was the demon's preferred place to hang out? In the church. That's interesting. Because we see in 2 Corinthians 11, 14 through 15a, and no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. It is not surprising then if his servants also masquerade as servants of righteousness. If you haven't read the Screwtape Letters, I suggest that you do, because it's going to help you understand how the enemy works and where the enemy likes to set up shop. Some of you had already said that you read it. The enemy loves to set up shop in the church. Well, he also loves to set up shop in your home. All right? We've got to know our enemy. Now, first, what did we do in basic training? We got to know our own stuff first, right? You got to know your own stuff first. I've heard the acronym Bible is Basic Instructions Before Leaving Earth, okay? This is our Common Soldier's Task Manual, okay? Get to know this, get to understand this. But then get to understand how your enemy works too, so that you can wage an effective war against him.